Alright, now this is a wide angle lens. I think it's raining. Okay, now this is a wide angle lens, or lens adapter. Okay, now this is a wide angle lens adapter. It's for this lens, the 28mm Sony, and it turns this lens into a 21mm. But the problem that I have with this lens adapter, like most wide angle lenses, is that the front element is bulbous and therefore you can't screw in a ND filter. So why would this even matter, I hear you, the one and only imaginary viewer that I have, asking me? Well, the thing about wide angle lenses is their primary use is for landscape photography. And if you want to be able to slow the shutter speed down so you can get that nice blurry water look, well, without a filter thread, this is pretty freaking useless. So with that said, I'm going to sort this out. Welcome to DIY Camera Fixes. Let's get going. Hello again, I'm Sean and this is Made to Ramble. Let's get straight into it today. After the video that I made a while ago about exploring alternatives to the Adobe Cloud Suite, I figured I would give you all a bit of an update. I have in fact now said goodbye to Adobe. Well, kinda. While I had no trouble finding a great video editing alternative, I was a little less impressed with the options when it came to Photoshop alternatives. It's not too hard to find something to replace Lightroom, but I haven't really found anything with a feature set quite as rich as the Photoshop itself. So for now, I am using Adobe's photography plan. And at $14.99 per month, it's a whole lot more affordable than the complete cloud suite. I will mention though that I was pretty unimpressed with Adobe when it came to changing over my plan. I actually had to completely cancel my membership and wait for it to expire before I could take advantage of the recent price drop down to $14.99. If I had changed my plan through normal means, it would have cost me $28.99 per month instead. Don't you love the way that we're penalized for being a pre-existing customer? Anyway, you may be wondering how my experience has been so far using Davinci Resolve. Do I miss Adobe Premiere? Not at all. I am loving Resolve. It is hard to believe that it's a free app. There is one limitation though that I will mention. While the free version allows you to import and export UHD, that's not Cinema 4K but UHD, it does not allow you to work with 10-bit files. Those of us who own a GH5 might want to consider upgrading to the paid version. But if you're using one of the Sony cameras, it's not likely to make much of a difference to you. And that naturally brings us to the Sony matter. Well, actually before that, I may have found an answer to the issue that we were talking about earlier with the lack of ND filters for wide-angle lenses. Let's take a quick trip to the beach and I'll show you what I mean. Alright, we're here right now at a nearby beach so that I can make an attempt at something I tried earlier that I saw recently on a Tony Northrup video. I won't go into a lot of detail explaining how to do this, but I will include a link below for the Tony Northrup video. He does a far better job of explaining it than I would. This is basically an alternative method for achieving that lovely blurred water look without needing an ND filter. It involves taking a series of photos, generally around 20, at all of the exact same scene, and then blending them together into Photoshop. I made an attempt at this earlier, but my system seriously struggled to handle blending together 20 42 megapixel raw photos. So I'm having a go again, but this time at a much more conservative 18 megapixels. And I'll be doing these all as JPEGs. So taking 20 shots now, let's see how it turns out. Okay, we're back, and it's time to talk about why I might be ditching Sony as well. As you can probably see, over the last few years I have amassed a decent collection of lenses. We have them for two different camera systems. I have the Micro Four Third and the full-framed Sony lenses. I'm a big fan of both. And of course, at the moment, Sony have been making waves with the latest iteration of the A7 series, particularly the A7 III. There has been a mass exodus from some of the other popular brands over to Sony, and given the feature set of these new cameras, that is not really much of a surprise. But I, on the other hand, find myself lately considering the opposite. I'm considering moving exclusively over to the Micro Four Third system and ditching Sony altogether. Now, why would I choose to do this? I should really preface all of this with the fact that I am not using the latest model of Sony cameras. What I do have, and I'm filming with right now, is the Sony a7R II. It has a few flaws that the latest versions have since corrected. Short battery life. The autofocus system, while it is hybrid, is nowhere near as reliable as the ones on the newer versions. Truth be told though, even with these issues corrected, I still think that I'd prefer using the Panasonic cameras. There's something about the GH5 and even the GX85, something about the design, the menu system, it just kind of gets out of your way and makes it easier to get the shots that you're chasing. I know that there have been some improvements to the layout of the new Sony cameras and that it's a little easier to customize, but the GH5 is so much easier to use just straight out of the box. There's also quite a few features on the GH5 which I've found to be invaluable. While the Sonys have been removing features, things like time-lapse for example, with the Play Memories app, Panasonic are throwing everything but the kitchen sink into their cameras. And these aren't all just silly gimmicks. The 6K photo mode has proven to be invaluable in some circumstances for me. I've used this function a lot while on safari in Africa, and it is really convenient. It makes it a whole lot easier to capture those perfect moments. You do sacrifice raw capture using the 6K photo mode, but I think it's worthwhile if it has you bringing home more keepers. The 6K photo mode also simplifies focus stacking. In a fraction of a second, you can capture a series of images all focused at different points and blend them together for maximum depth of field. Can you imagine how handy this would be for macro photography? And then of course we get to the main reason why I'm thinking of ditching my Sony gear. It's really all just about convenience. My primary use for this camera gear is for travel photography and videography. Weight matters when you're traveling, and it really makes no sense at all to be carrying two different camera systems. That's twice the number of lenses. So why Micro Four Third over full frame? Well, I have a keen interest in wildlife photography, and with the Micro Four Third crop factor, the lenses are a whole lot smaller. This lens, which has an aperture of f2.8 throughout, offers an equivalent focal range of 80 to 300 millimeters. An equivalent lens for full frame would be absolutely enormous. This lens over here offers 100 to 300. That's 200 to 600 millimeter equivalent. Compare this to the size of the Sigma 150 to 300 millimeter. That lens is enormous. I could easily get away with traveling with just these three lenses and being able to meet all of my needs. What I have here is a nice fast zoom lens, a nice fast telephoto lens, and with the 1.4 times teleconverter, it gets me to over 400 millimeters at f4, and this super fast prime lens for those times when I want really shallow depth of field. So what do you guys think? Let me know in the comments. What am I sacrificing here? I'll try and do a follow-up video later and let you know what I've actually decided to do. I'm really curious to know what everyone's opinion is. So, I've just got one last thing to talk about now. But to do that, we're going to need to take a quick drive. So here we are nearby to Neil Hawkins Park in Joondalup, and this here behind me is my favourite tree. What? I mean, people collect pet rocks. Why can't I have a favourite tree? So if you don't think that my tree is all that, just check out some of this sexy tree B-roll. I've got some bark in my mouth. Okay, so it is a little unusual having a favourite tree, but I guess the point that I'm really trying to make here is that almost anything can be an interesting subject for photography. You don't have to live in the Alps to find something to photograph. If all else fails, just find a tree on its own in the middle of a field. Try taking photographs of it at sunrise and sunset. Try different times of day, pay attention to where the shadows fall. Try different weather conditions. You'll be surprised at how many different tones and moods you can create, all just with the one subject. I guess in making these videos, I'm aiming to offer some encouragement to get out there, but I'm also trying to motivate myself as well. We can all find better things to do, but in reality, this is the kind of subject that really helps us to hone our skills and to develop our own style. So let's all get out there. Well now, how about you guys? Do you have a favourite tree? Or a rock? Or a fern? I apologise for the delay. This video took a lot longer to produce than I was originally planning. Unfortunately, my laptop shut itself this week and it took a while to get it fixed. It's all up and running now. I'll be aiming to get out another video in about 2 weeks' time. I figure I'll give myself a little more time, so hopefully it'll be a little easier to find something interesting to put out. I am hoping to put out another music video as well with Koichi soon. It has been a while since I've done one of those. So until then, if you enjoyed this video, hit the like button, subscribe if you haven't done so already, and I'll see you again soon.